have so many past experiences, all of these past experiences make an imprint upon you, whether you allow it or not. And especially when things get intimate, like for every dude you get intimate with, you just have this additional layer of imprintation. And what's going to end up rocking the boat is you end up getting with a dude down the road and he's not as good in bed as the dudes before him. You're not going to give the same energy to the man that you say you love than you gave to the dude that you were just hot and looking to get it popping in your 20s. What does that say about the relationship? And I think that's one of the biggest fears that dudes have going into commitment is they don't want to be second fiddle to a previous relationship that you had that you couldn't hold on to. There's a reason why you're not still in that relationship.
Isn't that what we're going to talk about later?
Oh, there's a little bit of that. But that's going back to imprintation and the like soulmate thing where if you're marrying a dude that isn't your first choice because you believe that your first choice is your soulmate and you see him with somebody else and you always hold it against your husband, like that has huge negative ramifications in not only the relationship that you're in, but any future relationship that you'll be in until you figure out what's going on with that. So bottom line, I don't think the soulmate thing is a thing that we should be perpetuating in life.
No.
There's plenty of people out there that could be great partners for anybody else. So I would recommend to dudes not to lock in. And when you're dating, not to be in a rush to commit because you're the gatekeeper of relationships. And as a woman, I'd say, hey, be careful who you give it up for because it has lasting consequences.
On both them, but also more than likely, especially with women, on yourself.
Some women are not as fortunate where they can go ahead and get both the hair pulling and the nice and stable relationship at the same time.
Getting to live book talk.
Yeah, right? Hey, sometimes you just got to shift gears, right? And that's just what it is.
Not that I would know anything about that.
Oh, yeah. No, never. But anyhow, that kind of like encapsulates the bit of just demystifying the whole soulmate myth. If we could just encourage people to be open-minded and not to lock in. And if you are locked in, just to go ahead and shoot your shot. And if it doesn't work out, move on. Does that seem pretty reasonable? Yeah. So let's go ahead and talk about the Cardinal Rule of Relationships. Now, this isn't just like in a marriage or in a boyfriend-girlfriend relationship or in a situationship. This is a pretty widely applicable concept. In any relationship, the person with the most power is the one who needs the other the least. So this goes back to the whole needing and wanting thing. Let it sink in.
Say it again.
All right, I'll say it one more time. In any relationship, the person with the most power is the one who needs the other the least. Okay, so let's go ahead and not look at this from the concept of a relationship between a husband and a wife to start. Let's go ahead and start with something that most of us can really dial in on, and that's the employer-employee relationship. Now, while an employee is a valuable asset to a business, most employees at the associate level and a couple of levels up are very replaceable. This is just what it is. Like in the event that something happens and they need to move on to another line of endeavor, we can hire somebody else and train them to do the things that we need them to do. They need the paycheck in order for them to live their life in a way that makes sense for them based on what they could provide to the marketplace. What I provide to them is something that it is very difficult for them to replace for themselves. Very few people are self-employed in the United States because it turns out it's really freaking hard to go ahead and be your own boss and to produce something consistently that is of value to others. But it's much easier for you to go ahead and lock yourself in on a system that somebody else has. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Okay. Now,
by the way, if any of our employees are listening, we love you so much. We
absolutely
really do. You essentially, like, functionally, you're a cog in the wheel, but We love each and every one of our peoples.
We do, in fact. But I mean,
As individual human beings.
there are fundamental economic relationship or realities that go along to this, right? We
But
treat our
they know what's up. They
right.
really do.
We
They're
treat
really
our employees
reasonable.
very well, and we take care of them. We pay well above average wages compared to the industry that we're in and all of that. And we do a lot of things to take care of them. So it's not a direct message to them,
No.
but really a broad spectrum discussion
We're
of
painting with a broad brush here.
right, the employer-employee relationship across our society in a way that people can understand. The next thing is familial relationships, right? So between parents and kids. Kids really can't do a whole lot on their own. They are in a dependency role compared to the parents.
Yeah.
Right? And that's just a natural part of life.
And that's like that's our parental responsibility, is to train them to be functional human beings in the essentially 18 years until they become adults that they're under our roof.
Sure, under our roof.
Yeah.
Whereas other people, they'll have the 26-year-olds. No shade,
Failure
no
to
tea.
launch.
If you got failure to launch situations, hey, I encourage you to help them to grow and develop and be their own person. But it's just a reality of today where there's a lot of people that are just doing the Peter Pan thing. And if you're a dude that's doing the Peter Pan thing, I highly encourage you. Please don't do that. It hurts you and it hurts those around you. It may not seem like much now, but by the time you're in your 30s, you'll start feeling the consequences of
No,
it.
Jeffrey told you that he didn't want you to grow up, but it's only because he wanted you and your parents' money. So
You know,
you
it's
gotta
really,
let that go.
it's sad because Toys R Us is bankrupt now and
I
it
know.
doesn't
It's like,
exist.
how did that work
Right.
out?
Yeah. I don't want to grow up because if I did, I couldn't be a Toys
Now
R
you
Us kid.
can anyway.
Now you can't be a Toys R Us kid anyway because now they don't exist. Jeez. So there's the lesson.
you,
Grow
Jeffrey.
up, handle your business. Hey, man, Jeffrey was great.
He left us.
He left us, yeah. It wasn't his fault. He just wasn't getting fed enough.
He went out to get the milk and never came back.
Jeez.
I'm sorry.
I was going to go with the pasture, going out to pasture reference, but sure. All right. So let's go ahead and talk about applying this idea in a sexual relationship, right? It's just a fact of life that one person is going to love the other person more. You're not going to go ahead and love each other the same. Psychologists go ahead and refer to this as two roles, one of them being the adorer and the adored. Mm-hmm. The person that is the adorer is the one that is looking up to their beloved and wanting more from them, whereas the adored is the one that has the praise shoveled upon them. And there are ways that this can happen in any relationship, but there's always going to be one in the adorer role and one in the adored role. I would suggest that men be working towards being in the adored role because it is a much more stable environment for everybody in the family for it to be that way. Mm-hmm. It is a much stronger family when the dude is in a position of being strong and respected and looked up to, because you are much more likely to have better outcomes, not only from your spouse, but from your children as well, because they get to see that being played out in front of them. Mm-hmm. Now, there's a lot of responsibility in having that role and wielding that with responsibility. Mm-hmm. And I think that it's much better off for the woman to love the man more. But it's much harder for the guy to achieve that because he has to do all these things to be that excellent man to get that.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, being in that spot is just, it's tougher because, again, with all the benefits of that, I guess, there's a lot of responsibility that comes with it. But the bottom line is there can't be equality in that. There can't be a homogenous division of that. It's like Highlander. There can only be one.
So what you're getting at is it's never going to be equal. And so
that's okay.
And that's okay. That is preferable because of the long-term positive consequences that come from that and building that dynamic. Whereas when you put your spouse or your significant other as a guy on a pedestal, they'll lose respect for you over time. Because if you just go ahead and lift them up and gas them up all the time, Like, don't get me wrong. Yes, you want to go ahead and be encouraging and being loving and all that, but it's a different kind of energy to go ahead and put them up on a pedestal and look at them as kind of like an idol or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
She will lose respect for you. And respect, I think, is the cornerstone of a positive relationship between a man and a woman. Because I think that a woman is called to respect her husband and a man is called to love his wife. And that you end up with much better results by following that general guideline. Now, power and control get a bad rap in our current society because there comes with it these hooks that go ahead and assume bad action, that it's going to be used in a tyrannical way. Whereas there is a much better, much more even-handed approach that I would look at in terms of how you would use power and control in a relationship. I think the way that I look at it is I bear these responsibilities so that I can make a good life for you and our family. And I put my energy to that purpose.
Like with those things comes a whole litany of like responsibility again that I don't think women want to take on. But for me, when we were going through the source material, honestly, power and control are treated like are actually two separate things.
Okay. Tell me a little bit about that.
So power is how people mostly view the responsibility. With the wherewithal to make decisions like in our family, like major decisions and all of that, comes the responsibility of taking into consideration every individual and their needs and making the best moves for the collective.
Okay.
Whereas control really is more like the bad word that people see, where they're just exercising power for the sake of exercising power and giving not a whole lot of consideration to the responsibilities of it.
Sure. And there's good and bad ways to leverage both sides of that, right? Like I remember watching some clips about people having a debate and then somebody really losing in the debate and trying to wrestle control over the circumstances by putting out distractions and like asserting themselves in such a way that didn't end up looking good for them. Mm-hmm. They were just trying to go ahead and use a parlor trick to not deal with answering the question that was levied upon them that really, according to their worldview, they couldn't handle. So they tried to use like shame tactics and guilt tactics to wrestle control of the situation rather than dealing with the subject at hand. And I think that that's one of the more common ways that you see like power struggles in a relationship is when a woman is in her feelings and she uses things like shame, guilt, insults, and just refusal to give an inch. This is just normal things.
Yeah, I think more of the power versus control situation being in that the same thing that when I teach our kids, especially our older kids with all of these issues where we're talking more about the both and rather than either or situations. And we talk about the spectrum between being willful and then in the middle being willing. Power is exercised by both parties when in a relationship when they both kind of stay in their lane, they play their strengths and they're both willing to give deference to the other because they're kind of leaning into their roles and working cohesively.
Oh, absolutely.
Rather than being willful and exercising control over one over the other. And that becomes where the power struggles become, because when one starts to become more willful, there is another person who has to be willless.
Sure.
And give up that whole thing. So it's really power is where it's put in its proper place and both people are trusting the other to perform their role to the benefit of all.
Right.
And especially with a family to consider.
Hey, thanks for watching this clip. If you'd like to see more from this podcast, you can go ahead and click here, where the podcast episode is linked in its entirety. If you're new here, you might want to consider subscribing right here. Thanks so much. Make it a great day.